Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6, Audit Class AC30. Our group consists of 4 members in total. That are Nik Aini Sufia, Nurul Huda, Nabiha, and Wanur Adriana. And today we would like to present about our assignment about accounting fraud that has happened in the Olympus company at Japan. To begin with, let's understand the term accounting fraud first. In general, accounting fraud can be defined as any alteration or intentional misrepresentation of the accounts records. In the business world, accounting fraud can be seen when there is an alteration or intentional misrepresentation in the company's financial statement. This type of fraud usually happens to manipulate a company's financial health in order to hide any profits or loss incurred. Accounting fraud can be committed not only by the employees but also by the accountant or even the organization itself. There are 3 types of fraud where it can happen in a company, which are the overstatement of revenue, the unrecorded expenses, and the misstatement of assets and liabilities. Cook the book is one of the terms that is closely related to the accounting fraud. It is an idiom describing fraudulent activities that involve the practice of lying and cheating in the accounting record. Typically, cooking the books involves the manipulation of financial data to create non-existent earnings to make their financial results look better than they are. Some examples of techniques that is used to cook the books involve accelerating revenues, delaying expenses, manipulating pension plans, and implementing synthetic leases accounting tricks that provide incorrect information in a company's financial statement. Among the famous accounting fraud cases that has been exposed cooking the books is Enron and WorldCom cases where they claiming the existence of billions in assets in their financial records which didn't exist in reality. In response to this accounting scandal in the early 2000s, Sarbanes-Oxley Act 2002 was enacted as these fraud cases shook investor confidence in financial statements and required an overhaul of regulatory standards. To relate with our assignment, the accounting fraud can be further explained in the Olympus case, which was one of Japan's biggest corporate scandals. Olympus was formed in October 1990, formerly known as Takachiho Seisakusho, and specialized in microscope and thermometer businesses. In the 1970s, Olympus extended its business with 3 core products that are microscope, cameras, and medical devices. However, in 2012, 3 former executives of Olympus were pleaded guilty over charges related to $1.7 billion accounting cover-up of massive investment losses. What makes it more interesting, the fraud itself was not being committed by just ordinary executives, but merely the former chairman himself, Tsuyoshi Kikukawa, and other partners in crime that will be further discussed in the next section of this assignment.
How the fraud was perpetrated and concealed. In 1980 to 1990, Toshiro Shimoyama was the president and CEO of Olympus, Japan in 1980. Operational income of Olympus declined significantly as a result of the sharp appreciation of yen and falling dollar currency. Started making improper financial assets management intended for making speculative investments, headed by Hideo Yamada, accounting division, and Hisashi Mori, his subordinate. In 1991, Olympus started to suffer huge amount of losses from the speculative investment. Investment losses at Olympus had reached close to 100 billion yen. In 2001, Kikukawa promoted to become a president in April. Being known as a great leader, every decision made by Kikukawa is being followed without any criticism by the board of directors. In 2008, Olympus buys 3 companies paying far more than they are worth, the balance being unaccounted fees to a middleman of around 30%. The deal are for over $2 billion. Michael C. Woodford, the whistleblower. In 2004, Woodford became a main board member of Olympus Medical Systems Corporation and was appointed Executive Managing Director of Olympus Medical Systems in Europe. 2011, in April, Woodford was promoted to become COO and President of Olympus in Japan, replacing Kikukawa in April 1. He received an email regarding the information that Olympus might involve in fraud. He realized something suspicious in Olympus and started to investigate the problem of dubious transaction. He had no power to make a decision since Kikukawa was still in full charge of the company management. Small independent magazine called Fakta published embarrassing articles on Olympus' large losses on its recent acquisitions. It was said that Olympus consumed a sum of money to acquire Gyroscope, a company that manufactures medical devices in British. It was explained that Olympus acquires Gyros for $2.2 billion. Woodford also found that there were numerous business acquisition transactions were not compatible with Olympus. Olympus had overpaid $687 million advisory fees to an unknown company in Cayman Islands. 2011, in October, Kikukawa appointed Woodford in October 1 as the Olympus CEO, while Kikukawa remains as chairman. Woodford started to questioning to Kikukawa and Mori regarding the fraud happening in Olympus, but he was being ignored by them. Kikukawa fires CEO Woodford and dismissed at a short board meeting on October 14. He leaves and discloses his concerns publicly as a result of questioning about the payment related to acquisitions. 2011, in October, Woodford broke the story to the Financial Times and contacted law enforcement authorities in the UK and the US. After a week, the story appeared in the Japanese main press. In October 17, Olympus tells investors that it may take legal action against Woodford, accusing him of disclosing confidential information in media interviews. Olympus finally confirmed it paid $687 million to an advisor in a deal. 2011, in November, Olympus made admission related to the inappropriate company's accounting practice, which they were making dubious acquisitions in order to hide massive losses for 20 years. Kikukawa and Mori resigned from board on November 26. 2011, in December, the TSE suspended the company from the world's second largest stock exchange from its watch list for automatic ejection. Takayama set up 3 boards to review the conclusions of the panel, which were a management reform committee, a committee of lawyers investigating the role of board directors, and another committee of external lawyers investigating the responsibility of non-directors and corporate auditors. 2012, in January, Olympus filing lawsuit against directors on 8 and for all individuals, including audit firms, on the 17th January. After paying a small fine of $130,000 or 10 million yen, TSE agreed to Olympus remain listed on January 20, 2012. In 2012 February, 7 arrested in Tokyo, including ex-President Shoki Kikukawa, former Executive Vice President Hisashinori, former auditor Hide Yamada, former banker Achi Nagakawa, and Nobumasa Yoku, and 2 others. Kikukawa, Mori, and Yamada were arrested for alleged infringement of the Exchange Act and Japan's financial instrument. In 2012 March, prosecutors announced they have charged Kikukawa, Yamada, and Mori over the loss covered out.
Next, I will explain about fraud triangle. The first company in the fraud triangle is Pressure. For the first one, cover up losses. Mr. Chairman Toyoshi Kikukawa has made suspicious acquisitions involving 3 companies also known as dummy entities. These 3 acquisitions included a mail order of face cream company, a microwave cookery company, and a $687 million payment of advisory fees to an unknown Cayman Islands company. These acquisitions have concerned Mr. Michael Woodford because it has been recorded in the financial without any agreement. And when the transaction being totaled up, the amount is unrealistic. As you can see, in this component, emphasize an individual mindset in doing fraud. In other words, it refers to the purposes of fraud that happen in an organization. Okay, next point in this component is personal incentive. This fraud case also happened because of personal behavior by Mr. Chairman, which is Mr. Kikukawa. At first, it was an initiative from the board of directors in covering the losses that they made by themselves according to the phenomenon of the business from time to time. But moving forward, Mr. Kikukawa feel comfortable in doing fraud and make it happen within 20 years. And therefore, these fraud cases has been covering up within 20 years without knowing until Mr. Whistleblower opened up these cases up. Okay, next component in fraud triangle is opportunity. In this component, the first point is weak internal control. In Olympus' case, a fraud case occurred because they did not implement segregation of duties. Segregation duties are important due to achieving completeness in every activities involved, as well as to monitor all the performance including the employees and the business structure. So in this research, we have covered up and we have discovered Mr. Kikukawa is not a good leader. Mr. Kikukawa only relies on his trusted employee or trusted man, which means Japanese with Japanese, in the board of directors, and never bother Mr. Woodford. However, he also one of the member of board director. This is also because Mr. Woodford is a foreigner. Under this weak internal control, we also discover that there is lack of proper supervision. We can see that Mr. Kikukawa needs to be responsible for giving the employees training, but he never looks into the skills that his employees have. For example, Mr. Woodford has brought Olympus to the best supplier of medical devices internationally, but he significantly and directly fired him because of he always questioned about the suspicious acquisition. The second point under the opportunity component is ethical problem of the top management. The ethics is one of the factors that need to be highlighted in an organization. But in his Olympus cases, Mr. Kikukawa, of course, the one that made unethical in his own organization.
he being prejudiced towards Mr. Woodford by assuming him as a tuna sandwich wrapped in cling film, while Mr. Kikowa represents the sushi. This situation makes Mr. Woodford uncomfortable and realize that Mr. Kikowa is trying to explain his role as a foreign employee who has no right to correct the chairman and should not interfere or object to any of his secret internal activity. He also mentioned to Mr. Woodford that he should be not too busy to worry about these domestic issues. Meanwhile, it is common in Japan. They made non-verbal communication to inform people as well as to warn people out of their business. The third point in this component is inadequate accounting policies. This is because these fraud cases also included the auditor Hideo Yamada to doing this fraud. He supports and agrees with Mr. Kikowa's illegal activities. Therefore, it can be estimated that Yamada is giving more towards the non-audit services to the company, which not in compliance with the procedure in presenting the financials. Last and but not least, under this fraud triangle, there is component of rationalization or attitudes. This component emphasizes the justifications of the person that committing fraud. This refers to how the attitude was shown for purpose to get the fraud done. So under this component, we discovered that the problem in the Olympus case is loyal. Instead of working, commonly Japanese people are very loyal towards the leader. No matter how bad or good the order is, they will always follow the leader. So this has been shown in this case, the trusted man under the board of directors has followed all the order from Mr. Kikukawa. And this has put aside Mr. Woodford. However, he is a president in the organization. Therefore, in this case, it is clearly shown that loyalty can lead to disloyalty, and the Japanese will always work for the Japanese. In other words, being prejudiced towards the foreigner to get a valuable return, but at the end, they suffered a huge loss and are sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Consequences of fraud. Consequences of fraud is the effect obtained by an organization or individual after a fraud had been revealed. Here are few consequences of fraud that happen and can be discussed based on Olympus scandal. Firstly, auditors. Auditors should be competent and independent when audit a report. If they were found having fraud, meaning that they are not independent, as there could be a conflict of interest when making a report. For example, Yamada, who was an auditor for Olympus, was found guilty and arrested as he violated the financial statement. Not only that, after the scandal occurred, a lot of investors state that this happened due to audit failure, and it also set a lower audit quality in Japanese capital market. Secondly, the company. Possibility for a company facing bankruptcy is high, as they need to pay for the penalty, and for them to build up their name back need a lot of time and high effort to prove back their credibility to the world. Hiroyuki Sasa, CEO of Olympus in 2012, said that the most challenging part was to gain back a trust from investors. He also said that Olympus maybe need to do some merger and acquisition (M&A) or switch into a new area or field for the company to continuously operate in the future. After that, management. When a fraud occurred, it shows that a company having a poor management system, like in Olympus, when the fraud had been exposed, it showed that Olympus had a poor internal control, do not have segregation of duty, and use hierarchy-driven culture in a management. Hence, if Olympus want to prevent fraud from happening again, they need to tighten tighten up their internal control, segregate the duty, and stop using this hierarchy-driven culture in their company anymore. Next, the shareholders. Shareholders will suffer losses too, as they are financially bound to the company. If company had a fraud and was compounded for a penalty, it will give disadvantages to them. So, it will make shareholders lose their interest towards the company, and they may resign from the company too. Hence, the company will lose their shareholders, and it will be hard for them to find new shareholders after scandal occurred, like what happened in Olympus. Furthermore, from the audit committee aspect, if audit committee knew and aware about a fraud that occurred but didn't take any action, there was possibility of them having conflict of interest or bias in the company, as they were not carrying out their responsibilities. The consequences are that the company need to recruit new audit committee members, as the previous one were not independent, same as what had happened in Olympus. Then, for bank perspective, bank is the external parties in an organization that interest with company's financial statements, as they are one of the lenders in a business world. Hence, if the company making fraud and false their financial statement, the bank will sue and compensate them, and they will lose their trust toward company, and this situation had occurred to Olympus too. Next, individual that involved in fraud. Of course, those who commit a crime will be punished, and so the one who did or involved with fraud too. As an example, Kikukawa and 5 other executives were directed to pay sum of money due to the fraud that they made. Not only that, it will impact their name too, as they had committed a crime, and it will make them having a bad history. Furthermore, they also will not easily be trusted by people or in a business world anymore. Finally, their customer trust and brand reputation. A single lie destroys a whole reputation of integrity, said by Corporation. Like in Olympus, after the fraud news had been spread out, their reputation had been tarnished, and they lost their trust from clients and customers, as their client didn't want to sign a contract with them after the rumors about them, which is their scandal of fraud and having a connection with Yakuza had been started.
In conclusion, we can conclude that Olympus scandal has become one of the biggest cover-ups financial losses in Japanese corporate history. It has attracted worldwide public attention after its own CEO and President Michael Woodford was fired by the board of directors when attempting to uncover the fraud within the company. This case has raised the concerns on how the company is being managed at Japan, when Japan financial regulators have tolerated the hidden loss, whereby the top management of Olympus was able to hide $1.7 billion in investment losses for nearly about 20 years. Based on the fraud triangle concept, we can identify that the pressure to commit the fraud was initiated when the company has